Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed. At 1,000 subscribers, I'll be posting a special video. My hand slammed the restroom door open, and something clicked above me. I froze under it, heart racing already, and I am Jake Miller, 30. I did not know it then, but that tiny noise would wreck my sense of safety. For a second, I just stood there and waited for another sound. Nothing moved, no toilets, no faucets, just that first click replaying in my head. I stepped to the urinal anyway, forcing my shoulders loose, pretending nothing felt wrong. Another faint snap came from high near the stalls, sharp and mechanical. The hair on my arms lifted like someone had just whispered my name. I lifted my phone, fake checking a notification while my eyes scanned upward. There was a metal vent over the last stall, bolted near the ceiling. Behind the slats I caught a single red gleam, quick and nervous. That light flicked off the instant my gaze locked on it. I tried to tell myself it could be anything harmless. Some sensor, some building gadget, something dull that never involved my body. My stomach still tightened, because sensors do not usually hide behind vents. I turned to the sink instead and watched the ceiling in the mirror. Water stayed off, everything stayed too still, but someone was definitely inside. A shoe shifted behind the far stall door, just one tired drag. I recognized the scuffed sneakers from the break room and meetings. They belonged to Evan from accounting, who loved watching people more than spreadsheets. The toilet flushed once, fast, almost impatient, then silence swallowed the room again. No paper rustled, no zipper, only slow breathing filtering under the door. I stared at the stall gap, then at the vent, then back. The red light glowed again, softer, like it had started recording fresh. My mouth went dry enough that I could not swallow right. I leaned over the sink, pretending to check my hair, eyes on the ceiling. If I was wrong, I was the crazy guy obsessing over vents. If I was right, I was already on someone's hidden camera. The stall latch snapped open, and Evan stepped out with his phone raised. He did not look surprised to see me, not even slightly bothered. His gaze brushed past me, then lifted toward the vent for half a beat. He shifted the phone in his hand like he was checking a setting. Hey, he tossed the word out casual and stepped to the sink beside me. Water rushed while he watched my reflection instead of his own. His thumb moved across the screen with practiced little swipes. I could not stop wondering where that camera pointed a minute ago. I forced a greeting back, light, something about meetings running long. My voice sounded wrong to my own ears, thinner than usual. Evan's mouth curled like he knew exactly why I sounded off. He dried his hands quickly and walked out, leaving the door swinging. As the door eased shut, the room dropped into that weird muffled quiet. I turned the faucet on just to break it, letting the noise cover me. The vent sat above the last stall, innocent metal hiding a dark center. I knew if I climbed up and grabbed that device, someone would notice. Standing there, I realized I no longer felt alone anywhere in the building. I checked the corners, the mirror edges, every surface that could hold a lens. The red pinprick in the vent stayed dark, but I felt it anyway. Whoever put it there had already seen plenty, and I might be next. I left the restroom faster than I wanted, forcing my pace steady. The hallway felt too wide now, like it held angles I could not see. Every ceiling fixture looked suspicious, every grill looked like a hiding place. I kept replaying the timing of that first click with each step. At my desk I tried to work, but the screen blurred around the edges. Emails piled up, numbers shifted, nothing stayed in my head for long. Across the room, Evan rocked lightly in his chair, scrolling his phone. Every few minutes his eyes flicked toward the hallway that led to that door. I watched him laugh at something unseen, shoulders loose, posture easy. He never once looked at me long enough to show concern or guilt. That calm face bothered me more than any obvious panic would have. I started to understand that the dangerous person is rarely the jumpy one. By the time the afternoon dragged close, I had made one quiet decision. I would not ignore that red light and hope it went away. I would go back in there alone, with my phone recording this time. If something really hid behind that vent, I planned to see it. I shoved my chair back and grabbed my phone like it burned. Record, that was the word stuck in my skull now. If that thing above the stall watched us, I would watch it. I walked toward the hallway and felt every step echo louder than usual. The closer I got, the more I wanted to turn around. My brain kept throwing up excuses, meetings, emails, anything but that door. My hand still reached for the handle and pushed it in. I knew if I bylaid now, I would never feel safe again. Empty. That was my first check, no shoes in sight. I hit video on my phone and lifted my hand high. I pointed the lens up toward the metal grill over the far stall. I did not breathe while the recording timer crept forward on the screen. I moved closer slow, like I was approaching some wired animal. The tiny opening above the stall stared back, dark and still. Then a faint pulse blinked inside the slats, barely brighter than a watch face. The timer on my phone kept climbing, and my throat closed around it. "Come on," I whispered, more to myself than anything listening. I tried to catch that flicker again, angling the camera right under it. Another small flash answered, steady this time, not accidental at all. That was enough for my brain to stamp one word on it: device. I pulled the zoom closer until the picture fuzzed and steadied again. The outline up there was not part of the building hardware. Square edges, a slot on one side, tucked right behind the grill. Every second I filmed made me more aware my zipper was still open. I killed the video, finished my business fast and washed up. I wanted to check the clip right there, hands still wet. Instead, I heard footsteps in the hallway and forced myself calm. I locked my screen, turned off the water and waited by the door. The knob turned and Louis walked in, scrolling his phone. He glanced up, caught my face, and his eyebrows went up. "You look like you found a dead mouse," he muttered, half joking. I swallowed hard because what I found felt worse than that. "Can you check something with me?" I asked, voice low. He put his phone away, which he never did mid-break. He studied me for a second, then nodded once. "Is this about the weird way you bolted earlier?" he asked. I unlocked my phone and pulled up the video with shaking fingers. We stepped near the sinks, bodies blocking the view of the stalls. I held the screen between us, thumb hovering over play. My chest thumped so loudly I wondered if the microphone had caught it. The clip started with a jerk as I lifted my arm. Ceiling, tile, then the grill above the furthest stall came into frame. For a heartbeat nothing moved, just a blurry square behind the metal. Then the pinpoint glow popped on, bright enough to show its shape. Louis leaned in closer, lips pressed tight, eyes locked on the image. Another blink, the little cube outline flickered clear, then faint again. Louis exhaled hard, stepped back and rubbed his face once. "That is not standard building equipment," he muttered, voice gone flat. My stomach flipped because hearing someone else say it changed everything. As long as it sat only in my skull, doubt still existed. Now it lived in his eyes too, and there was no going back. "Tell me I am not overreacting," I managed, though I already knew. "You are not," he answered, no hesitation, not even a pause. He jerked his chin toward the stall, toward the grill above it. "You filmed while you were in here?" he asked, narrowing his gaze. The implication hit both of us at the same time and stung. "We need this proof, but that thing might have you too." The thought slid over my skin like grease and stayed there. If the angle caught me, it probably caught a lot of guys. Every visit, every careless moment, all fed into someone's private archive. Louis stared at the door, jaw tight, weighing something heavy. "You have to report this," he finally said, voice barely above a breath. "You really think I can walk into HR with restroom footage?" I asked. The absurdity of the sentence almost made me laugh, almost. He shook his head and looked down at my phone again. "Save it somewhere else first, somewhere they cannot wipe it easily." His hands never stopped moving, thumb tapping his leg in quick bursts. He kept glancing between the stall and the hallway like someone would burst in. We left the restroom together, not talking until the hallway emptied out. At the corner he slowed and touched my sleeve, pulling me aside. "Do not confront anyone yet," he warned, eyes sharp now, expression stripped. He did not have to say who he meant, we both pictured the same face. Back at my desk, I forwarded the clip to my personal email. My finger hovered over delete on the original, then moved away. If anything later disappeared mysteriously, I wanted to know it. I also backed it up to a cloud folder and renamed it something boring. Across the room, Evan spun lazily in his chair, feet pushing off. He talked to a coworker, laughing at something on his screen. He looked like the last person who worried about anything right now. That easy posture made my teeth clench harder than any obvious guilt would have. He checked the time, got up, and headed toward the break area. On the way, his gaze slid past my desk, barely touching my face. It lingered just a fraction too long on the hallway behind me. My skin prickled because I suddenly wondered how often he timed his trips. I tried to focus on my workload, but my attention refused to stick. Lines of text bounced, numbers shifted, nothing stayed long enough to sink in. Every time someone stood up, my eyes flicked to see their route. Every trip toward that door felt like another risk we did not understand. By the time lunch came around, my nerves buzzed under my skin. Louis dropped into the chair across from me, tray clattering too loudly. "Any more brilliant ideas since the restroom?" he asked, forcing a smirk. His foot bounced under the table like a jackhammer he could not shut off. I pushed my food around, appetite gone, mind spinning faster than my fork. "We should check if there are more of those things," I whispered. "Not just here, maybe other floors, maybe other rooms," I added. The thought made my chest feel tight, like the building walls had crept closer. He considered it, chewing slowly now, no more jokes on his face. "If this is bigger than one spot, HR needs to know yesterday. Or this blows up on all of us when it surfaces somewhere else." He looked around the room like cameras might be hidden in the vents there too. That was the first time I noticed how many places could hide one. Corners, ceiling panels, ducts, anywhere nobody ever really inspected. Once your mind goes there, you cannot unsee the possibilities again. Every quiet corner turns into a question you never wanted to ask. We spent the rest of lunch building a simple, stupid plan. I would keep the footage stored outside company systems, at least 2 backups. Louis would casually check other men's rooms when he had a reason. If he spotted anything similar, we would skip debate and go straight to official channels. It sounded straightforward when we laid it out between bites. In reality, it meant walking into private spaces already poisoned by suspicion. It meant hoping the person hiding cameras was not watching us test things. It meant accepting that we might become targets just for noticing. Before we split, Louis gripped my wrist once, quick and firm. "Do not go in there alone again with your phone out," he warned. "If someone is tracking that feed and sees you probing, this escalates." His eyes held mine long enough that I knew he pictured consequences too. Back at my seat, I opened the video again through my personal account. This time I watched not just the cube, but the angle of the shot. The field of view looked wide, pointed right toward the urinals and sinks. A chill crept down my back as I realized how many faces it probably caught. I almost closed the clip, then forced myself through the full length. Near the end, just before I dropped my hand, something shifted in frame. A faint change at the edge, like someone adjusting something behind the wall. No clear shape, just a tremor in the pattern that should have stayed static. That tiny movement convinced me more than the blinking glow had earlier. A camera alone is one thing, a camera someone actively watches is another. This was not forgotten tech, this was maintained and monitored in real time. And whoever watched had just seen me look straight back at them. A new text jolted my screen the moment I minimized that video. Unknown number, no name, just digits I did not recognize at all. The message read, "You like filming in there," with a winking emoji. I stared at it so long my vision tunneled around the words. My first thought was spam, some random wrong contact messing around. Then my chest tightened because hardly anyone knew what I had recorded. My thumb hovered over reply while sweat gathered along my palm. Another message dropped in before I could type anything back. "Careful where you point that thing," that was all it said. No context, nothing about work, just that line and dead silence. I lifted my head slowly and scanned the office in front of me. A few people talked near the copier, but one person was already watching. Evan leaned back at his workstation, chair tipped just enough to swivel. His gaze slid past my monitor like he had timed it on purpose. When our eyes met, he smiled, tiny and private, then looked away again. I could not prove those texts came from him, but my pulse decided. I locked my phone and slipped it into my pocket with shaking fingers. Every instinct screamed to walk straight to HR and dump everything. Another part of me pictured that message printed out on a conference table. I knew exactly how it could be twisted against me instead. Louis walked by with a folder tucked under his arm, heading nowhere urgent. I stepped into his path and probably looked worse than I felt. He stopped short, reading my face before glancing around for anyone nearby. "We need a quiet corner," I whispered, already moving toward an empty room. Inside the small meeting space, I pulled my phone out again. I turned the screen toward him and showed the two messages without comment. He read them once, jaw setting, then read them again slower. His should. Ers dropped a little, like the air had gotten thicker around us. "Did you give that recording to anyone here?" His voice came out rough. I shook my head and pressed my back against the door for support. "Then someone knows you were in that bathroom with your camera up." The way he emphasized that last word made my stomach twist hard. I opened my messages, tapped the unknown number, and hesitated over the options. Blocking felt good in theory, but it also killed a possible trail. Should I answer and pretend I have no idea what they mean? Just saying it out loud made me feel like I was sticking my hand in a trap. Louis paced an uneven little line in front of the table, thinking. "If it is who we suspect, he wants you riled up." He rubbed his face, then pointed at the text, not touching the phone. "He also wants you to know he noticed you snooping around in there." That detail slid under my skin and settled there like a splinter. Someone had watched that moment when I pointed my camera toward the ceiling. Not later, not by accident, but while it actually happened live. That meant I was not dealing with some forgotten gadget gathering dust. "We still take this upstairs," he said, voice more sure now. "But we do it in a way that does not make you the weird one." He walked to the glass wall, peeked out, then dropped the blinds slowly. The small click from the mechanism made both of us flinch at once. He turned back toward me with a new kind of resolve in his eyes. "The number is our leverage," he said, tapping the phone again. "Do not respond yet, let them think you are spooked and quiet." He glanced at the door handle, then at the ceiling tiles above us. For the first time, I noticed how easy it would be to hide tech there. Little corners, gaps, spaces nobody ever really inspected on purpose. That realization spread through me like cold water, fast and unavoidable. I understood then that the bathroom might just be the most obvious spot. We left the rooms separately, a few minutes apart, trying not to look coordinated. Back at my desk, I opened work files and pretended to focus on tasks. Every couple of minutes, I snuck a look toward Evan's area. He barely moved, just scrolled his phone, legs crossing and uncrossing slowly. Another text flashed on my lock screen an hour later during a meeting. This one read, "Relax, nobody has to get in trouble over this." My ears buzzed as I read it, hidden under the table edge. That line confirmed what I had been trying not to admit to myself. After the meeting, I headed to the bathroom on a different floor. Louis had suggested I check other spots, but I had stalled. Now the anonymous messages had shoved me past hesitation into something bolder. If cameras existed elsewhere, I wanted to know how deep this went. The upstairs men's room was quiet when I went in alone. No one at the sinks, no sound from behind any partition. The air felt different, a little warmer, like ventilation struggled there. I stepped farther inside and tilted my head up with purpose. Another vent sat above the stalls, nearly same design as downstairs. I squinted, searching for that same unnatural shape behind the pattern. At first I saw nothing but shadow and plain metal, no glow. Then a faint glimmer flashed, tiny and quick, then vanished again. My throat tightened in the exact same way it had earlier that week. I stepped under it, closer than before, phone already in my hand. I started a new recording and lifted the device toward the ceiling. This time the shimmer steadied sooner, like whoever watched recognized me. I kept my arm raised longer than felt reasonable, shoulder aching. The longer I filmed, the more confident I grew that it was real. There was structure there, lines, an outline that did not match building plans. These gadgets were not random, and now I had proof on 2 floors. The bathroom door creaked open behind me and my chest seized. I lowered my hand fast, stuffing the phone into my pocket in one motion. A coworker I barely knew stepped in, nodded, and went to a stall. He did not notice my rigid posture or the sweat along my neck. As soon as he closed the stall, I walked out, legs unsteady. The corridor felt longer than usual, each step heavier than the last. Someone brushed past me in the hall while talking on a headset. I flinched so visibly they turned to look back with a puzzled frown. Lewis was waiting near my workstation when I got back, arms folded. He studied my expression before I even said a word about upstairs. I jerked my chin toward the far corner, and he followed without question. We ended up in a supply closet with the door pulled almost shut. "There is another one up there," I told him, voice rough. His eyes widened, then narrowed, the initial shock already turning into anger. "Same setup?" he asked, leaning forward, one hand braced on a shelf. "Enough that I am not calling it a coincidence," I answered. I pulled out my PH.1 and showed him the fresh recording silently. The outline in this room looked slightly different, like a newer model. Still tucked near the vent, still equipped with that pulse of light. Lewis cursed under his breath, then dragged a hand through his hair. "This is too big for us to handle quietly," he said after a moment. "We are not talking about one creep grabbing a cheap toy once." He looked almost sick as the scale of it settled on him. If these are networked, someone is gathering a lot more than bathroom footage. I had tried not to think past the walls of our own building. Now my imagination raced ahead anyway, painting scenarios I hated. Shared files, hidden channels, people I would never meet watching strangers undress. My skin crawled just picturing my coworkers, faces popping up in those feeds. "We go to security first," Lewis concluded, hands finally still at his sides. "They handle building infrastructure, they can trace power or signal sources." He paused, then added, "We keep HR in the loop later with evidence." That order made sense, but it still felt like stepping onto a stage. We set a time, end of the day, when offices usually thinned out. Until then, every minute crawled by under a weight I could not shake. The anonymous number stayed quiet, but the previous texts stared up at me. Each time I checked my phone, they felt like eyes more than words. Around mid-afternoon, I caught movement in the reflection of my monitor. Evan walked behind my row, slower than usual, not talking to anyone. He stopped for a heartbeat near the aisle, just within my peripheral vision. I refused to look up, but I could feel his attention on my shoulders. He shifted closer, resting a hand lightly on the back of my chair. "Internet running a little choppy today," he remarked, casual, almost friendly. Maybe the building finally noticed all the extra bandwidth getting used. I turned then, and his smile was too controlled to trust. My lungs forgot how to work for a moment as our eyes locked. He gave my chair a tiny push, like nudging a friend toward focus. "Better keep your data safe," he added, tone light, then moved on. My grip tightened on the armrest until my knuckles ached under the skin. I knew that could have been nothing, just random chatter during a slow afternoon. But paired with the anonymous texts, the bathroom feeds, and his behavior earlier, it felt like a warning wrapped in a joke, tossed right into my lap. I decided then that waiting until the end of the day was a mistake. I messaged Lewis from my computer with a single sentence, no details. "Change of plans now," was all I typed, then I hit send. He glanced up from his station, caught my eye, and gave a short nod. We stood almost at the same time, pretending we were heading opposite directions. Instead, we met near the elevator, where fewer people lingered mid-afternoon. He studied my face and did not bother asking what changed. "That look means we go straight to whoever has cameras of their own," he muttered. He jabbed the button for the lobby, and we rode down in brittle silence. The security office sat behind a pane of reinforced glass near the entrance. Years working there, and I had never needed to step inside it. Now my heartbeat pounded in my ears as we approached the doorway together. I realized whatever happened next would stick with me longer than any job title. The guard's head lifted the second our shoes crossed that doorway. His hand froze on the keyboard, eyes flicking from my badge to my face. "Problem?" he asked, not unfriendly but ready for something messy. I felt my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. Lewis stepped in closer than I could manage and took the lead. "We need to show you something sensitive," he said, voice clipped. "Not out here," he jerked his chin toward the side office. The guard studied us a heartbeat longer, then unlocked the inner door. Inside, the air felt heavier, quieter, like sound did not travel far. Screens lined the wall, each one tracking some angle of the building. I caught a glimpse of our floor, frozen momentarily in a looping view. The guard shut the door behind us and waited, arms crossed. I pulled out my phone, fingers stiff, and opened the first clip. No preamble, I just hit play and held it up between us. Ceiling, tile, then the familiar square outline near the fixture above the stalls. That tiny flare of light flicked on and off as the timer ran. The guard leaned in, frown deepening, one hand braced on the desk. He did not interrupt, which rattled me more than if he had. When the clip ended, I slid to the second one from upstairs. By the time that finished, his jaw was clenched tight. He pointed at the screen with two fingers, knuckles pale. "That footage is from our property?" he asked, very precise now. I nodded once, throat dry, aware this could spin the wrong way. Lewis added, "Same setup and at least 2 men's bathrooms that we know." "The go." Ard swore under his breath, then spun toward his workstation. He pulled up a program I had never seen before, graphs pulsing slowly. "Maintenance flagged odd wireless traffic around those zones last week," he muttered. "Looked like random interference, not corporate gear until now." The graph showed peaks near the same areas I had recorded. Not just one spike but repeated waves, like something checked in often. He highlighted a cluster labeled with a generic hardware ID and timestamp. "That signal does not belong to any authorized hardware on our list." My stomach twisted as he clicked deeper into logs I did not understand. "Whoever set this up knew how to keep it quiet," he added. "Short bursts, low power, just enough to push data offsite." He looked back at me. "You did the right thing walking in here." I should have felt relief then, but all I felt was exposed. Because confirming it meant this was now bigger than one creepy gadget. It meant someone had been quietly siphoning pieces of our lives for days. And we are probably not the only ones on those files, I thought. Another security officer stepped in after a knock I barely heard. The first guard passed him my phone like it weighed more than plastic. They watched both clips in full, trading glances that kept tightening. Finally, the second one looked at me and asked, "Anyone contact you directly?" My fingers cramped around the device before I even unlocked it. I pulled up the messages from the unknown number, lined in awful order. "You like filming in there? Careful where you point that thing. Relax, nobody has to get in trouble." I held the screen steady while they read, pulse hammering in my ears. "That is intimidation," the second officer said, jaw rigid. "Who else knows you captured those images besides him?" He nodded at Lewis. "Nobody," I answered, hearing the tremor I tried to hide. "Whoever texted me must have watched live or checked soon after." They asked for permission to photograph the messages and the clips. I handed the phone over reluctantly, mind racing with what-ifs. They snapped shots, transferred copies to an encrypted drive, then gave it back. "Do not delete anything," the first guard instructed, "even if you want to." "Do you have anyone in mind who might be behind this?" That question hung between us like a trap I had walked toward all day. I thought about those sneakers in the stall, that strange half-smile in the mirror. My gut had already decided long before my mouth followed. "There is a guy on our floor who spends a lot of time on his phone," I started. I described Evan's timing, the way he glanced upward, the comment about data. I stuck to movements and behavior, nothing that sounded like petty office gossip. By the time I finished, both guards looked like they had heard enough. The second one scribbled his name on a pad, underlining it once. "We will pull access logs, check where his badge has been active," he said. "We will also trace any personal devices hitting those hidden units." The way he said it told me they had done this kind of dig before. "Here is what happens next," the first one continued, shifting into procedure. "Those bathrooms get shut right now under a maintenance excuse. We get building engineers to remove everything discreetly, bagged for evidence." He paused, then added, "You two stay completely out of that area until we clear it." I felt an urge to argue, to stay involved now that I had started it. Instead I nodded, because some part of me wanted distance from those ceilings. Lewis agreed, lips pressed together, as if speaking might fracture something fragile. We both knew backing off did not mean we were safe, just sidelined. Do not discuss this with anyone else at work yet, the second guard warned. No group chats, no jokes, no hints over lunch. If the person responsible gets spooked, they could wipe whatever we have not found. That was the part that chilled me most, the idea of evidence vanishing mid-investigation. When we stepped back into the lobby, the noise felt wrong. People checked in, badges beeped, business continued like nothing had shifted upstairs. Louis let out a breath I did not realize he had been holding. "This just left our hands," he murmured, and that frightened me more than it comforted. By the time we reached our floor again, an email had already gone out. Short-term facility work on certain restrooms, vague and bland, no details. Minutes later, printed notices appeared on doors, steering traffic to different levels. Every line of that corporate language hid the real story humming underneath. I sat back at my workstation and tried to appear normal. Conversations buzzed around me about the inconvenience, not the cause. Most coworkers grumbled and then moved on with their routines. Only one person in the room looked genuinely rattled. Evan stood near the walkway, phone in hand, staring toward the hallway. He walked over Ush the newly posted sign with 2 fingers, testing it. His mouth tightened just barely before he turned away. On the way back, his eyes brushed past my desk, cold and quick. That look snapped any illusion that he was unaware of the shutdown. He did not ask anyone what happened, did not crack a single joke. He just returned to his chair and stared at his screen without scrolling. It felt like watching someone recalculate a plan in real time. The rest of that afternoon crawled, every tick of the clock too loud. I kept expecting security to appear at his side, to escort him out. Instead, nothing visible happened, which twisted my nerves even tighter. Silence from people in charge can feel worse than open chaos. On my way out that evening, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. I checked the display in the elevator, stomach dropping at the same unknown number. "Bringing friends into this now," the message read. "Then hope you pick the right ones." I stared at those words while the elevator doors closed in front of me. The timing was too perfect, too close to our visit downstairs to ignore. Someone knew we had gone to security, and not just from simple guesswork. Either he watched camera feeds himself, or he had an ally inside that room. Security caught me before I passed the lobby turnstiles. A guard stepped into my path, palm raised, expression steady. "Come with me upstairs," he said, voice quiet enough to hide urgency. Every person behind me kept walking while my day slammed sideways. They walked me into a conference room with the blinds already down. Louis sat at one end of the table, shoulders locked, hands clasped. Across from us, the 2 officers from yesterday waited with folders open. An HR manager I barely recognized watched me like I might bolt. One guard slid a sheet across the table toward me. On it were screenshots of my text thread with that unknown number. Next to them were timestamps from building systems printed in hard lines. Beneath each time was a location label that made my throat dry. "Whoever messaged you uses a device pinging near the men's facilities," the guard explained. "Same zones where we pulled unauthorized transmitters this morning." The HR manager tapped a column with several entries stacked. "This pattern follows one employee badge more than any other." He turned another page and rotated it so I could see. Door logs, elevator usage, access to storage areas, all under one name. The same name Louis and I had given them yesterday sat highlighted. Seeing it in ink made everything feel less like suspicion and more like weight. "We located 5 separate units," the other guard added, voice grim. "2 in areas you showed us, 3 in different sections on other floors." He did not list which sections, probably on purpose, probably for later. Each one fed into a hidden receiver in a locked maintenance cabinet. The HR manager folded her hands, bracelets clinking softly, eyes never leaving me. "That cabinet was assigned to a contracted tech who no longer works here." She paused, letting that land, then continued, "Access was changed a month ago. The only badge used there since belongs to your coworker Evan." My pulse hammered against my ribs hard enough to make my neck ache. It was one thing to follow a hunch in a restroom. Hearing these people connect physical evidence to a person I saw daily hit different. I realized this would not end with a quiet firing and a memo. Did he ever make comments that felt off? The HR manager asked. Anything about privacy, about coworkers, about recording. I thought about the line he dropped near my chair yesterday. Better keep your data safe, the way he lingered on safe. I told them short and exact without adding drama around it. Their pens scratched, faces hard to read, every detail locked down. Part of me worried they heard paranoia instead of facts. Another part knew I would regret staying silent even more. The second guard checked his watch, then looked at the HR rep. They are bringing him up now, he said, tone clipped. We wanted your statement recorded before he sits in that seat. He nodded toward the empty chair across from me like it was occupied already. My skin prickled at the thought of sharing a room with him today. Do I have to be here for that part? I asked. The HR manager shook her head immediately, standing as she replied. You will be moved to another space before his conversation starts. As if on cue, there was a knock on the door. A third security officer leaned in and murmured something low to the others. I caught only fragments, words like escorted and belongings and pocket contents. Then a name that made my stomach feel like it had been punched. They walked me and Lewis to a smaller office down the hall. As we stepped out, I saw Evan between two guards at the elevator. His hands were loose at his sides, not cuffed, not trembling. He noticed me instantly and each cut of his stare felt surgical. He did not speak, just held my eyes during the whole walk. One guard placed a hand on his arm, steering him inside. The doors closed on his expression, completely unreadable. I realized I had no idea what that man was capable of off camera. In the side room, the HR manager offered water neither of us touched. We might need follow-up questions once law enforcement reviews everything, she said. That word law enforcement sliced through the air and hung there. I had expected security, maybe company lawyers, but not police yet. Are we in trouble for not coming sooner? I asked before thinking. Her head shook fast enough to answer clearly. You reported as soon as you had more than a feeling, she answered. Right now you are witnesses and possibly victims. That label made my teeth clamp together. Victim, I had chased this thing like I was outside it. Hearing that word put me right back under those hidden lenses. My mind flashed images of myself washing my hands, unaware and exposed. After she left, Lewis and I sat in tight silence. He bounced his leg, heel thudding softly against the floor. This is going to blow up, he muttered, finally breaking the quiet. People will lose their minds when they find out where those things were. And some of those people will be on the recordings, I answered. Saying it out loud made the room feel smaller around us. We were not just dealing with office embarrassment anymore. We were dealing with evidence that could ruin lives beyond this building. An hour later, two detectives arrived, plain clothes, badges clipped to belts. They introduced themselves with first names and sat opposite us. One opened a notepad, the other placed a little device on the table. Audio only, he said, pressing a button, red light blinking on top. They walked us through the whole timeline, start to now. Where I stood when I heard the first odd sound. How many times I went back before talking to anyone else. Why I approached security instead of calling police right away. I talked more than I expected, words tumbling out sharper than usual. Every time I faltered, they guided me with a focused question. They never made me feel dramatic or foolish for noticing a blinking dot. That helped, but it did not lighten the heaviness in my chest. Then they revealed their piece, the one that still knots my stomach. Some of the storage cards we pulled this morning contain clips from your floor, one detective said. He kept his voice level, no extra sympathy layered over it. There are multiple individuals recorded without knowledge, some frequently. Any children? Lewis asked before I could bring myself to ask it. A beat of silence stretched as both detectives exchanged a look. Not children, but one appears to be a college-age intern, the other answered. We are verifying ages and identities very carefully before moving forward. The device on the table kept blinking while my mind ran ahead. Those clips had traveled somewhere, probably not just to one private folder. Once that kind of footage leaves a controlled space, it crawls everywhere. The thought made me feel like my skin did not fit right anymore. We have also seized a phone and a laptop from your coworker's area, the detective continued, along with a personal drive located in his assigned locker downstairs. Preliminary review suggests remote access to an offsite server, he added. That phrase offsite server painted a much wider map than just our building. So even if you wipe everything local, it could still be out there, I said. He gave a small nod, which somehow felt worse than a bigger reaction. We work with specialized units on that portion, he replied. It takes time, but we have tools for tracking that kind of distribution. They asked whether I wanted to be notified about case progress. Part of me wanted nothing more than to forget every detail. Another part needed to know this would not be buried quietly. I chose updates even though I knew each one might reopen the wound. When the detective stepped out, HR returned with a new expression. We have placed your coworker on immediate unpaid suspension, she informed us. He is barred from the premises while this is investigated. Her tone made it clear that part at least was non-negotiable. I pictured Evan walking out, that earlier stare aimed straight at me. Suspension sounded too gentle for the damage already set in motion. But I also knew this was how systems moved, in slow, deliberate steps. Each one felt both necessary and painfully delayed. Back on our floor later, the office felt wrong, like an echo. People whispered in pairs, huddled near desks, phones clutched tighter than usual. A rumor storm had started without any official announcement. You can always tell when a secret cracks, even before words catch up. Is it true somebody got walked out by security? One coworker asked near the BR. Eek area. I pretended to refill my water, heart thudding, ears tuned to everything. Another shrugged and muttered something about IT stuff and policy violation. Nobody mentioned hidden units or recordings, not yet. Lewis caught my eye across the room and tipped his head slightly. We understood we could not be the source of clearer details. The company needed its controlled narrative for legal reasons. We needed hours just to sleep at night. On my way to the elevator at quitting time, my phone vibrated again. For an instant I was sure that same unknown number had found another route. Instead, it was a notification from an unfamiliar address. Security had shared a copy of my own statement for me to review later. I stepped into the elevator and watched the doors slide shut. In the faint reflection, I studied my face, searching for changes. I did not look different, just more alert around the eyes. Inside, though, I knew I had crossed a line I could not step back over. My phone shook across the nightstand before sunrise and yanked me awake. Unknown caller again, same area code as the office, same creeping dread. I almost let it die out, then forced my thumb across the screen. A detective's voice came through, calm and alert like he had been up for hours. We executed a warrant on your coworker's place this morning, he told me. We need you downtown today to review some items connected to your case. He did not say alleged or maybe or possible anywhere in that sentence. My chest tightened because that meant they had found more than little gadgets. I pulled on clothes with clumsy hands, adrenaline doing most of the work. The entire drive, I kept checking the mirror like someone tailed me. Every time a car changed lanes behind me, my shoulders locked up again. I knew I was not the one in trouble, but my body disagreed. At the station, they led me into a plain interview space, nothing fancy. On the table sat a cardboard container filled with cables and electronics. Some pieces still had bits of ceiling dust stuck along their edges. Seeing them piled together like junk made my skin crawl in a new way. The detective set a laptop in front of me and angled the screen. We mirrored his external drive and a remote server he accessed regularly, he explained. There are files labeled by building, floor, and location. Hearing that structure out loud made my stomach flip like I had swallowed ice. He clicked through folders without opening any clips in front of me. Your office is listed in multiple directories, he went on. There are also subfolders named with time ranges and device numbers. The level of organization alone told me this had been going on longer than anyone guessed. Do you want to confirm whether you appear in any of these recordings? The question hung between us like a knife balanced on its tip. Part of me wanted to scream yes and get it over with. The other part wanted to walk out and never know. I nodded anyway because not knowing already haunted me. He opened a still frame instead of a full video, thankfully muted. My own face stared back from the corner of the image, half turned. I recognized the shirt, the watch, the exact day I first noticed something off. There are several segments where you are visible, the detective said quietly. We will classify you as one of the documented subjects in this case. He closed the folder, then shut the laptop completely, ending that part. I felt dizzy, like the room had tilted a few degrees to the left. He slid a paper across the table toward me, pen clipped at the top. It was a consent form acknowledging I knew I had been recorded. Signing it felt like admitting something had actually happened, no longer hypothetical. My signature looked shaky on the line, like it belonged to someone older. Your coworker is in holding right now, the detective added. He is facing multiple counts related to covert surveillance and distribution. He claims the content was for personal use only. That last part came out with zero belief behind it. Were any files shared? I asked, voice thin but steady. We suspect so, he answered, fingers drumming once against the tabletop. We have traces of uploads to an online repository not hosted here. Cybercrime is working on tearing that apart and tracking access. The idea of strangers downloading those clips looped through my head. Logging on, clicking play, maybe laughing, then moving on to the next victim. I wondered how many people out there treated this like regular entertainment. That thought made my hands curl into fists against my legs. The detective noticed and shifted the conversation toward what came next. There will likely be hearings, maybe a trial if he does not accept a deal. You may be requested to testify about how you discovered the equipment. Support services are available if you want them, he added more gently. I walked out into the sunlight feeling both exposed and strangely lighter. At least the shadow had a shape now, an arrest, a list of charges. Outrage mixed with nausea and something like grief for my old trust. I knew there was no world where I walked back into daily life untouched. The company held an all-hands meeting the following week, mandatory attendance. We packed into a large room, the air tight with speculation. Leadership stood up front alongside someone from law enforcement and corporate security. Their faces carried that careful expression people use when delivering bad news professionally. They called it a serious privacy incident and used legal terms. No graphic detail, no mention of specific locations, no names on the mic. Still, every man in that room knew exactly which spaces were targeted. I could feel the shift when they referenced restroom areas without elaborating. Some coworkers stared down at their shoes, knuckles white around coffee cups. Others scanned the room like they could spot everyone caught on those drives. A few looked toward me and then away quickly, connecting dots. I kept my eyes on the presenter because looking anywhere else felt dangerous. Afterward, the hallway filled with low conversations and sharp whispers. Do you think I am on there? Someone muttered near the exit. Why did nobody tell us sooner? Another voice asked, strained. The anger in those questions made my chest hurt because I had asked them too. Lewis caught up with me near the stairwell, hand grabbing my sleeve. Walk with me, he urged, already moving toward the door outside. We stepped into cooler air, away from ears and corporate phrases. For a moment we just stood, listening to traffic, not office noise. Do you regret starting this? He finally asked, eyes searching my face. I thought about the hidden equipment, the folders, the still image of myself. I hate that it was happening, I answered. I do not regret exposing it. Truth sat somewhere between those lines, heavy but solid. He nodded, jaw tight, then leaned against the concrete railing. I checked every public restroom I used this week, he admitted. Stores, gas stations, everywhere, my eyes go straight to the ceiling now. We both laughed once, sharp and humorless, then fell quiet again. That feeling does not go away fast, I told him. I walk into any enclosed space now and my brain starts scanning. Smoke detectors, access points, even decorative fixtures look suspicious. I hated that, but I also accepted it might keep me safer. Weeks passed and updates arrived in my inbox at random times. One email confirmed that additional devices had been located in his vehicle. Another mentioned search warrants served on cloud providers tied to his accounts. The language always stayed dry, even while describing something deeply violating. An invite came to attend a preliminary hearing as an impacted employee. I almost declined, wanting to shield myself from another direct encounter. In the end, I went because hiding felt too close to letting him own my reactions. I sat in the back, close to the aisle, ready to leave if needed. He entered with deputies on either side, wrists secured, eyes forward. Gone was the relaxed guy spinning in his swivel chair and scrolling. In his place stood someone drained, focused, calculating even with restraints. He scanned the room once and locked onto me almost immediately. Our gazes met for the first time since that day by the elevator. No smirk this time, no joking comment about data or bandwidth. Just flat recognition, like he was mentally placing me on his internal map. I held that look longer than I thought I could, then broke it on purpose. Hearing the charges read out loud made the room vibrate in my chest. Counts stacked up, each one tied to specific equipment and date ranges. Unlawful recording in private areas, distribution of voyeuristic material. Technical phrases for something that had felt slimy and terrifying in real life. He entered a provisional plea through his attorney and avoided speaking. When the judge reviewed conditions for release, my stomach clenched again. They restricted his movements, took his passports, banned him from our building. It still felt strange walking out knowing he might sleep in his own bed that night. Outside the courthouse, the detective from before caught up to me. "We are pushing for full restrictions on contact with any recorded individuals," he mentioned. "That includes direct messages, fake profiles, anything that could reach you." He looked me squarely in the eye. "If you get anything, call immediately." I nodded, fingers already tightening around my phone in my pocket. The unknown number that once tormented me had gone silent since his arrest. Still, every random spam text made my spine go rigid for a second. My brain rehearsed responses I hoped I would never have to send. Back at work, maintenance ripped out old fixtures and installed new equipment. Visible cameras near entrances, not hidden ones, and posted notices about monitoring. Restrooms were remodeled with fewer blind corners and sturdier fixtures. Even with all that, the first time I walked toward one again, my feet dragged. I stood outside the door longer than I care to admit. My body remembered standing under a ceiling grill while something watched. Finally, I pushed through and let the door close behind me. The space looked different now, but my pulse still jumped in my throat. I checked the ceiling, the wall plates, the mirror edges, every angle. No secret lenses, no strange flashing lights, nothing tucked where it should not be. A regular fixture stared back from above with a clear housing. Security had insisted on devices that could not be mistaken for anything covert. I stepped to the sink and turned the water on, listening. Some old instinct told me to glance toward the corners again. My reflection looked tense, but there was a new steadiness behind my eyes. I realized I was not just scared anymore, I was watchful. I use different restrooms now in different places, but the pattern stays. Walk in, scan the overhead spots, identify the exits, then relax slightly. It sounds paranoid until you have been the one caught without warning. After that, awareness feels less like anxiety and more like armor. Sometimes late at night, I still think about those files out there. Even with investigators tearing through servers, you never really know the full path. Maybe some clips were saved, copied, buried on someone's drive. Maybe a stranger somewhere still has a piece of my day paused on their screen. What I do know is this. The moment I lifted my phone in that men's room, everything shifted. I thought I was just grabbing proof of something creepy at work. Turns out I was also catching the exact second a predator realized I had spotted his favorite hiding place.